They called us soft species, hairless pink creatures clinging to a single blue world at the edge of nowhere. The Krillian Empire had conquered 14 star systems without meeting real resistance. Their battle fleets had turned 3 civilizations to ash and enslaved 7 others. When their scouts found Earth, they saw what every conqueror dreams of, a primitive world with no space navy, no orbital defenses, and a divided population that couldn't even agree on basic things. What they didn't understand was that humans had spent 10,000 years perfecting one skill above all others, killing other humans with terrifying efficiency. We had turned warfare into an art form, a science, and sometimes even entertainment. Our history was written in blood, gunpowder, and the screams of our enemies. The Krillians made their biggest mistake when they ignored our single transmission. Leave now. This is your only warning. We don't want to hurt you, but we will if we must. They laughed at our message, called it the desperate plea of a weak species facing extinction. They were about to learn why. In all the dark corners of the galaxy, there's an old saying that even apex predators whisper in fear. Never corner a human. Never threaten their children. And never, ever give them a reason to stop holding back. This is the story of what happens when an empire attacks first. And humanity shows the galaxy exactly why we earned our place as the most dangerous species to ever crawl out of a gravity well. Commander Zethrak stood on the bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought Voidrender, watching the blue-green planet grow larger on the main display. 14 conquered systems lay in the wake of his fleet, each victory easier than the last. The Krillian Empire's expansion had been unstoppable for 3 decades, and this primitive world called Earth would be no different. Scout reports confirmed, Commander, announced his tactical officer, Lieutenant Veltar. Her 4 arms worked across multiple control panels simultaneously. The target species has achieved basic spaceflight, but possesses no significant orbital defenses. Their largest vessels appear to be cargo haulers and scientific research platforms. Zethrak's mandibles clicked in what passed for Krillian amusement. Any military response to our approach? Minimal, sir. Several small craft have launched from their planet, but they're maintaining distance. We're receiving multiple transmission attempts on various frequencies. Put their primary communication through the translator. The bridge speakers crackled to life with a clear human voice. Attention, unknown vessels. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Council. You have entered our star system without authorization. State your intentions immediately. Zethrak gestured for the communication channel to remain open. I am Commander Zethrak of the Krillian Imperial Fleet. Your system now belongs to the Empire. Surrender immediately, and your species will be granted the privilege of serving our civilization. Resist, and we will demonstrate why 14 worlds have fallen before us. There was a long pause before the human voice returned, different this time. Calmer, more measured. Commander Zethrak, this is Secretary General Maria Santos of the United Nations. We've reviewed your credentials. Please understand that we've seen your approach for the past 18 months. We know what happened to the Altarian colonies and the Vex homeworld. Zethrak's upper eyes narrowed. These creatures had been monitoring his fleet's approach for over a year? Impossible. Their technology was barely above atomic level. The human continued. We're prepared to offer you safe passage through our system and resupply if needed. We have no quarrel with your empire, but we strongly advise you to continue on your current trajectory and leave our system peacefully. You dare attempt to negotiate? Zethrak's voice echoed through the bridge. Your pathetic world has no leverage. We've analyzed your military capabilities. Your most advanced weapons are crude chemical rockets and primitive nuclear devices. Commander, the human voice said, and now there was something different in the tone. Something that made Zethrak's primary combat instincts stir uneasily. You've made a mistake. You've assumed that what you can see represents the full extent of human capability. Let me be very clear. Leave now. This is your only warning. We don't want to hurt you, but we will if we must. The communication channel went silent. Lieutenant Veltar's 4 arms paused over her controls. Commander, should I attempt to re-establish contact? No, Zethrak said, though something nagged at the back of his mind. In 14 conquests, no species had ever sounded so confident when facing his fleet. The Altarians had begged. The Vex had threatened and postured before breaking. These humans simply warned him away as if they had any power to back up their words. Sir, called his intelligence officer from across the bridge. We're detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. The readings are inconsistent with their apparent technological level. Explain. Multiple high-energy sources are coming online across their major population centers. The energy output is massive, but we can't identify the technology being used. It's not fusion, not antimatter, not any power generation method in our databases. Zethrak moved to the intelligence station, studying the readouts. What he saw made no sense. The energy signatures were indeed massive, each one equivalent to the power core of a Krillian battlecruiser. But they were scattered across the planet's surface in dozens of locations. Could they be preparing some kind of defensive grid? He asked. Unknown, sir. The energy patterns don't match any known shield technology. And, Commander, there's something else. What? We're detecting massive thermal signatures moving beneath the planet's surface. The patterns suggest an extensive underground network, much more complex than our initial scans indicated. Zethrak felt a chill run down his exoskeleton. 14 worlds. 14 easy conquests. Not one had surprised him. Not one had hidden their capabilities so effectively. Sir, the communications officer suddenly came alive at his station. We're being targeted. By what? Their orbital platforms. No, sir, by I'm not sure what. The targeting locks are coming from the planet's surface, but the range and accuracy suggest technology far beyond what we've observed. On the main screen, Earth continued its slow rotation, looking peaceful and defenseless. Cities sparkled like jewels across the night side. No massive gun emplacements were visible. No orbital battle stations. Just a quiet blue world with its single small moon. Commander, Lieutenant Veltar said, her voice tight with concern. We're receiving another transmission. Put it through. This time the voice was different. Older. Male. Tired but absolutely certain. Commander Zethrak, this is General Marcus Webb, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You have 30 minutes to begin your withdrawal from our system. After that, We'll consider your presence an act of war. You threaten me? Zethrak roared. I command a fleet that has reduced entire civilizations to rubble. Yes, the human said simply. We know. We've studied every engagement. We've analyzed your tactics, your technology, your fleet compositions. Commander, you've been fighting agricultural worlds and peaceful traders. You've never faced a species that spent 10,000 years learning how to kill efficiently. The channel remained open, and the human's voice continued with unnerving calm. Your shields operate on a rotating frequency pattern. Your armor is designed to deflect energy weapons, but vulnerable to kinetic strikes above Mach 12. Your battle doctrine relies on overwhelming firepower from long range, but you've never developed effective close-quarters combat protocols because none of your previous enemies survived long enough to close distance. Zethrak felt his primary heart skip a beat. How could these primitives know such detailed information about Krillian military technology? We know about the plasma conduits that run along your ship's dorsal sections. The human continued. We know that your command structure breaks down when primary communication arrays are damaged. We know that your species requires a specific atmospheric mixture that becomes toxic if the nitrogen content drops below 18%. Impossible, Zethrak whispered. Commander, for the past year, while you've been monitoring us, we've been studying you. Every transmission, every energy signature, every piece of debris your ships have shed. We've built detailed models of your technology, your biology, your psychology. The intelligence officer looked up from his station, his face pale with shock. Commander, the energy signatures from the planet's surface, they're weapons. All of them. Weapons unlike anything in our databases. 27 minutes remaining, the human voice announced. Zethrak's mind raced. This had to be a bluff. A primitive species couldn't possibly pose a threat to his fleet. But something about the human's tone, the precision of their intelligence, the confidence in their ultimatum. Sir, the tactical officer called out. Multiple contacts separating from the planet's surface. On the display, dozens of small craft were rising from Earth's atmosphere. They moved with impossible speed and agility, their design unlike anything in Imperial databases. As they climbed towards space, their energy signatures resolved into something that made Zethrak's blood freeze. Each craft was emanating power readings equivalent to a Krillian destroyer. How many? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Still counting, sir. Current count is 236 craft, with more launching every minute. The human voice came through the speakers again. Commander, those are just our rapid response units. Our main defensive fleet is still warming up. You have 24 minutes to begin your withdrawal. Zethrak stared at the tactical display, watching as more and more impossibly powerful small craft rose from the planet's surface. This wasn't possible. No species developed such technology while remaining planet-bound. It violated every known progression of technological advancement. Sir, whispered Lieutenant Veltar, what are your orders? For the first time in his military career, Commander Zethrak hesitated. 14 worlds had fallen to his fleet through overwhelming superiority and the enemy's lack of preparation. But this felt different. The humans had been expecting him. They had studied his fleet for a year while appearing helpless. They had built weapons specifically designed to counter Krillian technology. And they had done it all while maintaining the appearance of a primitive civilization. The display showed Earth hanging in space like a peaceful blue marble, while hundreds of deadly craft rose from its surface like angry insects defending their hive. 22 minutes, Commander, the human voice reminded him. Zethrak realized that for the first time in his conquest of 14 worlds, he was genuinely afraid. Admiral Sarachan stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Colorado Rockies, watching holographic displays that showed the Krillian fleet maintaining position at the edge of Earth's gravity well. Around her, hundreds of technicians worked at stations monitoring everything from orbital mechanics to the atmospheric composition of enemy ships. Status report, she called out. Rapid response squadrons have achieved optimal positioning, reported Colonel James Park from the tactical station. All surface installations are at full combat readiness. The Australian array is locked onto their command ship. Chen nodded grimly. Humanity had spent the last year preparing for this moment, ever since long-range sensors first detected the approaching Krillian fleet. What the aliens didn't know was that Earth's governments had been monitoring galactic communications for decades, quietly listening to the screams from conquered worlds. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the intelligence station. We're receiving intermittent transmissions from their fleet. They're debating whether to attack or withdraw. Can you isolate individual voices? Yes, ma'am. The computer has identified their command structure. Commander Zethrak appears to be arguing with several subordinates about humanity's capabilities. Chen allowed herself a thin smile. Good. Doubt was exactly what they needed to sow in the Krillian ranks. What's their current assessment of our rapid response units? They've classified our fighters as impossible technology, ma'am. Their sensors can't explain how we're generating such high energy outputs from such small craft. The truth was simultaneously simpler and more complex than the Krillians could imagine. Humanity hadn't developed impossible technology. They had developed human technology. While other species progressed along predictable paths of advancement, humans had a disturbing tendency to find unconventional solutions to complex problems. The rapid response fighters were actually modified atmospheric craft equipped with fusion reactors that should have been too large to fit in such small vehicles. Human engineers had solved the space problem by designing reactors that operated at temperatures and pressures that would kill any other known species. Only humans could pilot the fighters because only humans could survive the acceleration forces and radiation exposure that the unconventional power systems created. Ma'am, Colonel Park called from his station. We're getting telemetry from the lunar defense platform. The Krillians just dispatched a scout ship toward our moon. Intercept course. Already programmed. ETA 3 minutes. Chen walked to the large central display showing the Earth-Moon system. The Krillian scout was a sleek vessel about the size of a human destroyer, moving toward Luna at high speed. What it would find there would likely determine whether this encounter ended in withdrawal or war. Put me through to Lunar Command. The display flickered to show Commander Elena Vasquez in the pristine white control room of Armstrong Base. Behind her, large windows showed the stark lunar landscape, and the blue marble of Earth hanging in the black sky. Admiral, Vasquez nodded. We're ready for our visitors. Show them everything, Elena. They need to understand what they're dealing with. Understood, ma'am. We'll give them the full tour. The transmission ended, and Chun turned her attention back to the tactical situation. The Krillian scout would reach Luna in under 2 minutes. What it discovered there would either send the alien fleet running or provoke them into an attack that humanity was more than prepared to handle. 300 years earlier, when humans first set foot on their moon, they had done so with primitive chemical rockets and basic life support systems. What they found there changed everything. Luna wasn't just a barren rock. It was a massive reservoir of helium-3, rare earth elements, and something even more valuable, a perfect staging ground for deep space operations. The lunar colonies that followed weren't just mining operations or research stations. They were humanity's first step toward becoming a spacefaring species. But they were also something the Krillians couldn't possibly expect. The most heavily fortified position in the solar system. Scout ship is entering lunar orbit, reported Colonel Park. On the display, Chun could see the Krillian vessel beginning its sensor sweep of the moon's surface. For several minutes, everything appeared normal. The scout would see the obvious installations. Armstrong Base, the mining operations at Shackleton Crater, the mass drivers that launched processed materials back to Earth. Then, the real defenses would reveal themselves. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez. We're intercepting frantic communications from the scout ship back to their fleet. Put it through the translator. The bridge speakers filled with an alien voice speaking rapidly in what the computer identified as extreme agitation. Command, this is impossible. The moon, it's not a moon. Repeat, this is not a natural satellite. Chun felt a surge of satisfaction. The scout had found the truth that humanity had spent 2 centuries concealing. Luna wasn't just Earth's moon. It was the largest artificial fortification ever constructed by any known species. Generations of human engineers had hollowed out massive sections of the lunar interior, creating a network of bases, factories, and weapon systems that extended deep into the moon's core. The surface installations were just the visible tip of a construction project that had transformed an entire celestial body into a fortress. Scout ship is requesting immediate extraction, Rodriguez reported. They're terrified, ma'am. What exactly did they find? According to their transmissions, they've detected massive artificial structures extending throughout the moon's interior. They're reporting energy signatures consistent with a battle station the size of a small planet, which was exactly what Luna had become. The lunar defense grid could generate enough firepower to sterilize the surface of a world, and its shielding systems were powered by reactors built into the moon's core itself. No enemy fleet could approach Earth without first dealing with humanity's fortress moon, and no enemy could possibly expect such a massive installation to exist in what appeared to be a primitive star system. Ma'am, Colonel Park announced, the Krillian scout is withdrawing. They're heading back to their fleet at maximum speed. Time to impact. 18 minutes until they reach the main fleet. Chen nodded and opened a channel to General Webb at the Pentagon. Marcus, they've seen Luna. How do you think they'll react? Webb's weathered face appeared on the communication screen. If they're smart, they'll jump to hyperspace and never come back. If they're proud, well, pride has killed more soldiers than enemy fire. Any word from our deep space monitors? Nothing yet. But, Admiral Chun, we need to be prepared for the possibility that they'll call for reinforcements. The Krillian Empire has resources we can only guess at. Chun understood the implication. Humanity had prepared for this fleet, studied this technology, built countermeasures for these specific ships. But, if the Krillians brought additional fleets with different capabilities? One problem at a time, Marcus. Right now we need to convince this Commander Zethrak that attacking us would be the last mistake his empire ever makes. The display showed the Krillian scout ship racing back toward its fleet, carrying news that would fundamentally change how the empire viewed humanity. For 3 centuries, humans had appeared to be a primitive species barely capable of reaching their own moon. The truth was that they had turned their moon into the most powerful weapon platform in known space. Admiral, called Rodriguez from the intelligence station, we're detecting increased activity from the Krillian fleet. Multiple ships are powering up their weapon systems. Expected response, Chin replied calmly. Colonel Park, signal all units to assume defensive positions. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. Ma'am, Rodriguez said, his voice tight with concern. The Krillian command ship is transmitting to their entire fleet. The computer classifies it as a battle formation order. Chin took a deep breath. Humanity had hoped that showing their true capabilities would convince the Krillians to withdraw peacefully. Instead, it appeared to have triggered their predatory instincts. These were conquerors who had faced minimal resistance for decades. They couldn't conceive of a species that might actually be more dangerous than they were. Time until they reach weapons range, she asked. If they maintain current acceleration, approximately 12 minutes. Open channels to all defense networks. Authorization code Alpha 77. Around the command center, status boards lit up as humanity's hidden defenses came fully online. The Australian Array, a collection of particle accelerators built into the continent's interior that could punch through any known armor at interplanetary ranges. The Sahara Grid, a network of laser installations that could focus the energy output of a small star onto targets anywhere in the solar system. The Arctic Fortress, a collection of missile silos that contained weapons specifically designed to kill starships. And those were just the installations on Earth itself. Signal from Luna, reported Colonel Park. Commander Vasquez reports all defensive systems at maximum readiness. And the asteroid belt installations? Ceres Station and the mining platforms report ready for combat operations. Chin smiled grimly. The Krillians thought they were attacking a single primitive world. What they were actually attacking was a solar system that had been turned into the largest fortress humanity could build. Every planet, every moon, every significant asteroid had been equipped with defenses specifically designed to kill starships. Ma'am, Rodriguez called out. We're receiving a transmission from the Krillian command ship. Put it through. Commander Zethrak's voice filled the command center. And now there was no mistaking the anger in his tone. Humans of Earth, you have concealed your true nature and deceived the Empire. This is an act of war. Prepare to face the consequences of your deception. Chin picked up the communications microphone and keyed the transmission switch. Commander Zethrak, she said, her voice carrying across space to the alien fleet. You were warned. We gave you every chance to leave peacefully. What happens next is entirely your choice. But, understand this. Humanity has been preparing for this moment for 300 years. We've turned our entire solar system into a weapon designed specifically to kill ships like yours. She paused, letting that sink in. Last chance, Commander. Leave now. And you live to report back to your empire that they should never return to this system. Stay. And discover why no species in this galaxy has ever successfully conquered a world full of humans. The transmission ended, and Shin waited for the Krillian response. It came in the form of a massive energy discharge from their fleet's primary weapons. The first Krillian plasma barrage lit up the darkness of space like a miniature, star-going nova. 23 capital ships fired simultaneously, their combined energy output enough to crack a small moon. The deadly streams of superheated matter raced across the void toward Earth at a significant fraction of light speed. They never reached their target. Commander Elena Vasquez watched from Luna's command center as the Fortress Moon's primary defense grid came alive. Massive capacitor banks that had been charging for decades released their stored energy in a precisely coordinated pattern. The lunar surface erupted with hundreds of brilliant flashes as electromagnetic railguns fired projectiles at velocities that approached the theoretical limits of matter acceleration. The tungsten rounds, each one weighing several tons and moving at 12% of light speed, intercepted the incoming plasma streams in a series of spectacular collisions that turned nearby space into a chaos of released energy and exotic matter interactions. Direct intercept on all incoming fire, reported Chief Petty Officer Morrison from the tactical station. 0 damage to Earth defense perimeter. Vasquez nodded grimly. Signal Earth Command. Tell them Luna's shields are holding, and we're tracking all hostile vessels. What the Krillians couldn't know was that humanity's 3 centuries of lunar construction hadn't just created a fortress. It had created a miniature artificial planet with defensive capabilities that exceeded anything in Imperial databases. The moon's interior had been completely restructured, its core replaced with a network of fusion reactors that could power defensive systems capable of protecting the entire Earth-Moon system. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. The Krillian fleet is regrouping for a second attack run. They're changing formation. On the tactical display, Vasquez could see the enemy ships spreading out into a complex, 3-dimensional attack pattern. Instead of concentrating their fire, they were preparing to attack from multiple vectors simultaneously, trying to overwhelm the lunar defenses through sheer volume of fire. Classic Imperial doctrine, she murmured. They've never faced an enemy that could stop their opening barrage. The truth was that humanity had studied every available record of Krillian military engagements. The Empire's standard tactic was simple and effective. Concentrate overwhelming firepower on a single point until enemy defenses collapsed, then systematically destroy all resistance. It had worked perfectly against 14 previous civilizations. But those civilizations hadn't spent 300 years preparing for exactly this scenario. Ma'am, incoming transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Chen's voice filled the Lunar Command Center. Elena, how are you holding up there? Luna is secure, Admiral. Their first strike was impressive, but our defensive calculations were accurate. We can handle whatever they're planning to throw at us. Good, because they're about to get a lesson in human military doctrine. We're initiating Maneuver 7. Vasquez smiled. Maneuver 7 was humanity's answer to the Imperial strategy of overwhelming firepower. Instead of trying to absorb enemy attacks, human forces would demonstrate that Earth's defenses were just the beginning of their capabilities. All stations, she announced, prepare for offensive operations. Across Luna's surface, concealed installations began to reveal themselves. What appeared to be mining equipment transformed into massive weapon systems. Scientific research domes opened to reveal missile batteries. Even the solar collection arrays reconfigured themselves into focusing mirrors for the laser defense grid. The Krillians were about to discover that humanity's Fortress Moon wasn't just defensive. It was the largest gun platform ever constructed by any known species. Targets acquired, reported Chief Morrison. All enemy capital ships are within optimal firing range. Fire when ready, Chief. Luna's primary offensive system was the result of human engineering at its most ambitious. Deep within the moon's core, magnetic acceleration chambers stretched for hundreds of kilometers, using the entire moon as a barrel for a railgun system of unprecedented scale. The projectiles it fired were small asteroids, accelerated to velocities that turned them into planet-killing weapons. The first shot lit up Luna's far side with an aurora of released energy as magnetic fields accelerated a 200-ton nickel-iron asteroid to 15% of light speed. The projectile crossed the distance to the Krillian fleet in under 30 seconds. Commander Zethrak's flagship, the Void Render, simply ceased to exist. The asteroid struck the massive dreadnought amidships with kinetic energy equivalent to a large nuclear weapon. The ship's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, provided no protection against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The Void Render broke apart in a brilliant flash of vaporized metal and released atmosphere. Direct hit on the command ship, reported Morrison. Target destroyed. But Luna wasn't finished. The Fortress Moon's secondary systems opened fire with a barrage that turned the surrounding space into a storm of destruction. Particle beams carved through enemy hulls like hot knives through paper. Missile swarms launched from concealed silos sought out targets with AI guidance systems specifically programmed to exploit Krillian shield frequencies. Most devastating of all were the gravity lances, weapons that used focused gravitational fields to literally tear enemy ships apart at the atomic level. The Krillians had never encountered such technology because no other species had ever thought to weaponize gravity itself. Within 10 minutes of opening fire, Luna had reduced the Krillian fleet by 40%. The surviving ships scattered in panic, their formation discipline broken by losses they couldn't understand or counter. For the first time in Imperial history, a Krillian battle fleet was in full retreat from an enemy they had underestimated. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Torres, we're receiving emergency transmissions from the surviving enemy ships. They're calling for immediate evacuation. Vasquez studied the tactical display, watching the remaining Krillian vessels fleeing in disorder. Part of her felt a twinge of sympathy for the aliens. They had spent decades conquering technologically inferior species, never dreaming they might encounter something like humanity. Open a channel to the surviving ships, she ordered. Channel opened, ma'am. Attention Krillian vessels. This is Commander Vasquez of Luna Defense Command. You attacked our system without provocation after being warned to withdraw. Your aggressive actions have resulted in the deaths of thousands of your personnel. She paused, watching the fleeing ships on her tactical display. However, we are not monsters. We will allow your surviving vessels to retreat and carry word back to your empire. But, understand this, if any Krillian ship ever enters the system again, we will consider it an act of war and respond accordingly. You have seen only a fraction of humanity's defensive capabilities today. The transmission ended, and Vasquez turned to her tactical officer. Chief, make sure they have a clear path out of the system. No pursuit, no harassment. Let them go home and tell their empire what happened here. Ma'am, Torres called from the sensor station. We're detecting additional energy signatures from Earth. The surface installations are powering down from combat readiness. Vasquez nodded. The battle was over, but she knew this was just the beginning. The Krillian Empire would not ignore the destruction of an entire battle fleet. They would return, probably with overwhelming numbers and advanced technology specifically designed to counter human capabilities. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, humanity had sent a clear message to the galaxy. Earth was not a target to be conquered. It was a fortress to be feared. Signal Earth Command, she ordered. Tell Admiral Chun that Luna has secured the system. Enemy fleet neutralized with minimal damage to our forces. As the last Krillian ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying word of humanity's true nature back to their empire, Vasquez allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. For 3 centuries, humans had prepared for this day. They had built their defenses in secret, hidden their capabilities behind a facade of primitive technology, and waited for the inevitable moment when some aggressive species would mistake human restraint for human weakness. The Krillian Empire had made that mistake, and they had paid for it with the destruction of their most powerful battle fleet. But, as she watched Earth hanging in the lunar sky like a blue jewel, Vasquez knew that this victory came with a price. Humanity was no longer hidden. The galaxy now knew that Earth was defended by technology and capabilities that exceeded anything in Imperial databases. The secret was out, and there was no going back. What worried her was the question of how the Empire would respond to this defeat. The Krillians had conquered 14 star systems through overwhelming superiority and had never faced meaningful resistance. The destruction of their fleet would either convince them to leave humanity alone forever, or trigger a response so massive that even Earth's defenses might not be enough. Time would tell which path the Empire chose. But, one thing was certain. The galaxy had just learned that humans were not the primitive, helpless species they appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous. A species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare, hidden their true capabilities until the moment of truth, and built defenses specifically designed to kill anyone foolish enough to threaten their home. The Krillian Empire had attacked first, just as humanity had warned them not to do. Now they would carry word back to their masters about the terrible mistake they had made. And, deep in the command bunkers of Earth, human military leaders were already planning for the inevitable return of Imperial forces, knowing that the next battle would determine whether humanity remained free or became the 15th conquered system in the Krillian Empire's expansion. The war had begun, and humanity intended to finish it on their own terms. 3 months after the destruction of the Krillian battle fleet, Admiral Sarah Chun stood before the assembled representatives of the United Earth Defense Council in the secure chambers beneath Geneva. The mood in the room was tense. Humanity had won the first battle, but intelligence reports from deep space monitoring stations painted a terrifying picture of what was coming next. Ladies and gentlemen, Chun began, activating the holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber. Our long-range sensors have detected the approach of the Imperial Response Force. What you're about to see will change everything we thought we knew about the scope of this conflict. The display lit up with a 3-dimensional map of local space, showing the location of Earth and the predicted approach vector of the incoming fleet. What appeared on the screen made several council members gasp audibly. This is the Imperial Second Armada, Chun continued. 437 capital ships, including 12 super dreadnoughts and 3 planet killer vessels. Their estimated arrival time is 6 weeks. President Martinez of the Americas Federation leaned forward in her chair. Admiral, our defenses were designed to handle the fleet we just defeated. Can we stop something this size? Chen's expression was grim. Honestly, I don't know. The Luna defense grid can handle multiple battle groups, but we're talking about an armada that could sterilize entire star systems. We've never faced anything close to this magnitude. Defense Secretary Wong of the Asian Alliance spoke up. What about our contingency plans? The projects we've kept in deep storage. That's exactly what we need to discuss, Chen replied. Operation Prometheus has been theoretical until now. If we're going to implement it, we need unanimous approval from this council, and we need to begin immediately. The display changed to show technical specifications that had been classified beyond top secret for over 2 decades. Project Prometheus was humanity's ultimate contingency plan, a weapon system so devastating that previous generations had hoped it would never be necessary to deploy it. For those who haven't been briefed, Chen explained, Prometheus is based on technology we developed during our early deep space exploration missions. When we discovered that our solar system contained unusual gravitational anomalies, our scientists learned to manipulate spacetime itself. The hologram showed a cutaway view of Earth's solar system, with red markers indicating the locations of massive installations hidden throughout the outer planets and asteroid belt. These weren't defensive positions like the Luna Fortress. They were components of a weapon system that could affect the fundamental structure of space itself. Chancellor Muller of the European Union studied the display with obvious concern. Admiral, are you suggesting we turn our entire solar system into a weapon? That's exactly what I'm suggesting. The Prometheus array uses controlled gravitational manipulation to create artificial singularities, spacetime distortions, and directed gravitational waves. In theory, we can target enemy fleets while they're still in hyperspace and destroy them before they ever reach real space. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had built a weapon that could kill enemies in another dimension. What are the risks? Asked Minister Petrov of the Russian Federation. Chen's expression grew even more serious. Total. If we miscalculate the gravitational effects, we could destabilize our entire solar system. If we generate too much spatial distortion, we could create a permanent rift in spacetime. And if we target coordinates incorrectly, we could accidentally destroy innocent vessels throughout this entire sector of the galaxy. President Martinez spoke quietly. And if we don't use it? Then, in 6 weeks, 400 Krillian warships arrive in our system and turn Earth into a lifeless rock. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Representatives argued about moral implications, long-term consequences, and whether humanity had the right to deploy such devastating technology. But, underneath all the political considerations was a simple truth. Earth faced extinction, and Prometheus might be their only hope for survival. Finally, Secretary General Santos called for a vote. All in favor of authorizing Operation Prometheus? The vote was unanimous. Over the following weeks, installations throughout the solar system came alive with activity that had been dormant for decades. On Europa, massive gravitational generators emerged from beneath the moon's frozen surface. In the asteroid belt, mining platforms revealed themselves to be components of an enormous array designed to focus gravitational forces across interstellar distances. Most impressive of all was the primary control station on Titan, where Dr. Elizabeth Harper led a team of specialists who had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. The technology they controlled was beyond anything the Krillian Empire had ever encountered, or even conceived of. Final systems check, Dr. Harper announced as the countdown to Imperial arrival reached its final hours. All gravitational generators are operating within normal parameters. Spacetime monitoring shows stable conditions throughout the target zone. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communications system from Earth. Dr. Harper, we're detecting the Imperial fleet's approach. They'll be dropping out of hyperspace in approximately 20 minutes. Understood, Admiral. Prometheus Array is ready for activation on your command. What the approaching Krillian fleet didn't know was that humanity had been tracking their hyperspace approach for the past week, using gravitational sensors that could detect the spatial distortions created by faster-than-light travel. The massive Imperial Armada was following exactly the trajectory that human scientists had predicted. Fleet emergence detected, reported the sensor technician. 437 vessels confirmed. They're dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of our system. Dr. Harper studied the targeting data flowing across her screens. The Krillian Armada was exactly where Prometheus had been designed to engage them. Far enough from Earth to avoid collateral damage, but close enough for the gravitational weapons to achieve maximum effectiveness. Admiral, she called, we have a perfect targeting solution. The entire Imperial fleet is within our engagement envelope. Chen's voice carried the weight of humanity's survival. Dr. Harper, you are authorized to activate Prometheus. Fire at will. The weapon that humanity unleashed upon the Krillian Second Armada was unlike anything that had ever been used in galactic warfare. Instead of energy beams or kinetic projectiles, Prometheus attacked the fundamental structure of spacetime itself. Gravitational generators scattered throughout the solar system created a focused wave of spatial distortion that raced toward the Imperial fleet at faster-than-light speeds. When it reached the Krillian formation, it began twisting the fabric of reality around the enemy ships. The effect was devastating. Massive Imperial dreadnoughts found themselves stretched and compressed by gravitational forces that exceeded anything they had been designed to withstand. Smaller vessels were simply crushed out of existence as space itself folded around them. Most terrifying of all were the artificial singularities that Prometheus could create on command. Tiny black holes, each lasting only seconds but generating gravitational forces that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. The Imperial fleet found itself under attack by weaponized gravity itself. Direct hits across the entire enemy formation, reported the targeting technician. We're reading massive structural failures on all enemy vessels. Dr. Harper watched in amazement as her life's work proved devastatingly effective. The Krillian Armada, a force capable of destroying entire civilizations, was being systematically annihilated by weapons that attacked the fundamental forces of the universe itself. But the battle wasn't over yet. Dr. Harper, called the sensor technician, were detecting escape pods and survival craft launching from the damaged Imperial ships. It looks like they're trying to evacuate their crews. Harper hesitated. The Prometheus array could easily destroy the fleeing craft, but these were no longer combatants. They were survivors trying to escape a battle they couldn't hope to win. Hold fire on the evacuation craft, she ordered. Target only the warships. It was a decision that would have profound consequences for humanity's relationship with the rest of the galaxy. Instead of completely annihilating the Imperial fleet, humanity chose to show mercy to defeated enemies. 20 minutes after the battle began, the Krillian Second Armada ceased to exist as a fighting force. Of the 437 ships that had entered Earth's solar system, only a handful of heavily damaged vessels remained operational, and these were in full retreat toward the edge of the system. Mission accomplished, Dr. Harper reported to Admiral Chun. The Imperial fleet has been neutralized. We're detecting approximately 200 survival craft containing enemy personnel, but they pose no threat to Earth. Chen's voice carried obvious relief. Outstanding work, Dr. Harper. Signal the surviving Imperial vessels that they're free to collect their people and withdraw from our system. Make it clear that we have no intention of pursuing or attacking evacuation efforts. As the remnants of the Krillian fleet gathered their survivors and prepared to retreat, humanity faced a new reality. They had just demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded anything in known galactic civilization. The Prometheus array had proven that humans possess technology capable of manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe itself. But this victory came with sobering implications. The Krillian Empire now knew that Earth possessed weapons that could destroy their most powerful fleets with apparent ease. How would they respond to such a devastating defeat? Would they seek revenge with even larger forces? Or would they finally recognize that humanity was too dangerous to threaten? Dr. Harper stood in the Titan Command Center, watching the retreating Imperial vessels on her displays, and wondered if humanity had just saved itself or signed its own death warrant. The galaxy now knew that humans were not just another spacefaring species. They were something unprecedented, capable of turning the laws of physics themselves into weapons of unimaginable power. The war was far from over, but humanity had just demonstrated that Earth would not fall easily to any empire, no matter how vast their fleets or how advanced their technology. The message had been sent clearly. Humanity had attacked no one, threatened no one, and sought conflict with no one. But if anyone was foolish enough to attack Earth first, they would discover why humans were the most dangerous species ever to emerge from a gravity well. 1 year after the destruction of the Krillian Second Armada, Emperor Vexthal stood in the crystalline chamber at the heart of the Imperial throne world, staring at reports that fundamentally challenged everything the Empire believed about its place in the galaxy. Around him, his most trusted advisors waited in uncomfortable silence for his reaction to intelligence that bordered on the impossible. "Tell me again about their capabilities," he said, his voice carrying the authority of a ruler whose word was law across 17 star systems. Admiral Korthax, one of the few survivors of the first encounter with humanity, stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "Your Imperial Majesty, the humans possess technology that can manipulate gravitational forces on a macro scale. They can create artificial singularities, bend space-time itself, and strike targets while those targets are still in hyperspace. And our fleets. Gone, Majesty. Both the initial battle group and the Second Armada. Out of over 500 ships, fewer than 30 survived to return to Imperial space. The humans, they simply deleted our forces from existence." Emperor Vexthal absorbed this information with the careful consideration of a leader who had never faced a military defeat in 40 years of expansion. The Krillian Empire had built its power on the simple principle that superior numbers and advanced technology could overcome any resistance. The destruction of 2 entire fleets by a single planet challenged the fundamental assumptions of imperial dominance. "What do we know about their political structure?" he asked. Intelligence Director Morthun activated a holographic display showing data gathered from intercepted human communications. "They appear to be a unified species, Majesty, but one with multiple governing factions that somehow coordinate their activities. Their military response was too sophisticated and too coordinated to be the work of a primitive civilization." Recommendations? The chamber fell silent. For the first time in Imperial history, the Emperor's advisors had no clear path forward. Every military option seemed to lead to defeat, while diplomatic approaches were complicated by the Empire's track record of conquest and subjugation. Finally, Admiral Korthax spoke. "Majesty, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood these humans. They are not a primitive species that stumbled upon advanced technology. They are something we have never encountered before, a species that developed in isolation while becoming incredibly dangerous." Explain. The evidence suggests that humanity has been spacefaring for centuries, but they deliberately concealed their capabilities while studying any potential threats to their system. They knew about the Empire long before we knew about them. They prepared specifically to fight us while maintaining the appearance of helplessness. Emperor Vexthal considered this assessment. If true, it meant that humanity had been waiting for the Empire to attack, using imperial aggression to justify a devastating response that had crippled Krillian expansion for the first time in decades. "Your Imperial Majesty," came a new voice from across the chamber. Ambassador Lythera, the Empire's most experienced diplomat, approached the throne with obvious nervousness. "We have received a communication from the human government." "Show it." The chamber's main display activated, showing the image of an elderly human woman seated behind what appeared to be a simple wooden desk. Despite the modest setting, she radiated an authority that was immediately apparent to anyone watching. "I am Secretary General Maria Santos of the United Nations of Earth," the woman began, her voice calm and measured. "I am addressing this message to the leadership of the Krillian Empire to offer terms for a permanent peace between our civilizations." Emperor Vexthal leaned forward with interest. In 40 years of conquest, no species had ever been in a position to offer terms to the Empire. The human continued. "Your forces attacked our system without provocation after being warned to withdraw peacefully. Your fleets were destroyed in self-defense. And we take no pleasure in the loss of life that resulted from your aggressive actions." A pause, during which the human seemed to be choosing her words carefully. However, humanity recognizes that the Krillian Empire represents the interests of billions of sentient beings across multiple star systems. "We have no desire for conquest, no interest in expansion beyond our own solar system, and no intention of threatening any civilization that poses no threat to us. Therefore, we propose the following terms. First, the Krillian Empire will formally recognize the Sol system as sovereign human territory, not to be entered by Imperial forces under any circumstances. Second, the Empire will provide coordinates and safe passage information for all systems currently under Imperial control, so that human vessels can avoid accidentally entering your territory. Third, both civilizations will establish a buffer zone of neutral space between our territories, with neither side deploying military assets in the designated area." The message continued with technical details about communications protocols, diplomatic contact procedures, and enforcement mechanisms. What struck Emperor Vexthal most forcefully was not the specific terms, but the tone of the proposal. This was not a negotiation between enemies, but a practical arrangement between equals. When the message ended, the Imperial chamber remained silent for several minutes. "Your thoughts?" the Emperor finally asked. Admiral Korthax was the first to respond. "Majesty, these terms are more generous than we have any right to expect. They're offering us a path to coexistence that preserves Imperial territory and prevents further conflict. But it also means acknowledging their equality," pointed out War Minister Thexlon. "The Empire has never negotiated with anyone as equals. The Empire has never been defeated before, either," Korthax replied bluntly. "We can attempt to gather more fleets and try again, but the intelligence report suggests that humanity has weapons we can't counter and defenses we can't penetrate. Another attack could result in the complete destruction of Imperial forces. Emperor Vexthul studied the strategic displays showing the current extent of Imperial territory. 17 star systems, hundreds of billions of subjects, and military technology that had proven utterly inadequate against human capabilities. The choice was becoming clear: accept coexistence with humanity, or risk the destruction of the Empire itself. Intelligence Director, he said, what is your assessment of human intentions? Morthon activated additional displays showing analysis of human communications and behavior patterns. Based on their actions following both fleet engagements, Majesty, the humans appear to be genuinely defensive in nature. They allowed evacuation of survivors, provided medical assistance to damaged Imperial vessels, and made no attempt to pursue retreating forces. They also demonstrated restraint in their use of gravitational weapons, added Admiral Korthax. Our analysts believe they could have destroyed our fleets without allowing any survivors at all. The fact that they chose not to suggests they are not inherently genocidal. Emperor Vexthul made his decision. Draft a response to the human government, he commanded. The Corellian Empire accepts their proposed terms for peaceful coexistence. We will recognize Sol System as sovereign human territory and establish the requested buffer zones. Your Imperial Majesty, War Minister Thexlon protested. This sets a precedent that could undermine Imperial authority throughout our territory. Minister, the Emperor replied with the finality of absolute authority. Imperial authority means nothing if the Empire itself ceases to exist. These humans have demonstrated that they can destroy our fleets at will. Continued hostilities would result in the annihilation of everything we have built over the past century. The formal peace treaty between the Corellian Empire and Earth was signed 3 months later in neutral space, witnessed by representatives from several smaller civilizations that had managed to maintain independence from Imperial expansion. The ceremony was historic not just because it ended the first war in human history, but because it marked the emergence of humanity as a recognized galactic power. But the most significant aspect of the peace was what happened afterward. True to their word, humans made no attempt to expand beyond their solar system or interfere in Imperial affairs. Earth became known throughout the galaxy not as conquerors or empire builders, but as the species too dangerous to threaten, the one civilization that had faced Imperial aggression and emerged victorious. Over the years that followed, other species began to quietly establish diplomatic relations with Earth, not because they feared human military power, but because humanity had demonstrated something unprecedented in galactic history: the ability to defend themselves without becoming aggressors. Admiral Sarah Chun, now retired and serving as Earth's first ambassador to the galactic community, often reflected on the events that had transformed humanity's place in the universe. The Corellians had attacked first, just as humans had warned them not to do. What they discovered was that humanity had spent centuries preparing for exactly that moment. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans were not a primitive species to be conquered or a threat to be eliminated. They were something entirely new, a civilization powerful enough to defend themselves, but wise enough to seek peace. And, in the end, that may have been humanity's greatest victory of all. Not the destruction of Imperial fleets or the demonstration of impossible technology, but the proof that intelligence and restraint could triumph over aggression and conquest. The Corellian Empire still ruled 17 star systems, but they ruled them with the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy was a species that had given them every chance to avoid conflict, and had proven that attacking humanity was the last mistake any civilization would ever make. The message had been sent, received, and understood throughout the galaxy. Earth was not a target. It was a fortress defended by the most dangerous species ever to emerge from a gravity well, a species that would fight with unimaginable ferocity to protect their home, but who preferred to live in peace with anyone wise enough to leave them alone. The Empire had attacked first. Humanity had warned them to run while they still could. In the end, the survivors were grateful they had been allowed to do exactly that.